In this video, I'm going to show you 8 common CV mistakes that you might be making that are causing your CV to get overlooked by recruiters, meaning that you're missing out on jobs that you really should be getting. And I'm also going to show you how you can fix these mistakes so that you can improve your CV, start to get more responses from your job applications, which will mean more job interviews and better job offers. So as you may well know, your CV is a really important document when it comes to job searching. It is the first impression that you will be making on recruiters and employers, and it's often what will stand in the way of you getting an interview or not. So if there's mistakes in your CV that are making you look unprofessional or unsuitable for the roles that you're applying for, then that's going to greatly reduce your chances of getting callbacks, interviews, and obviously job offers. So it's really important to stamp those mistakes out. So what I want to do in this video is run through 8 of the most common CV mistakes that I see candidates making, and just show you how you can fix them in order to improve your CV and start getting a better response in the job market. And of course, if you are new to the channel and you're currently searching for a job or looking for ways to increase your earnings, then don't forget to subscribe to the channel, because I make lots of videos to help with both of those topics. And of course, don't forget to hit the like button on this video so that you can store it if you need to come back and watch it later. So the first CV mistake on this list is probably the most damaging one, and it actually happens well before you start writing your CV, and that is failing to do your research. And what I mean by failing to do your research is that you do not research your target jobs before you start writing your CV. Now, if you write your CV without doing that, then you have no way of knowing what your target employers are looking for in a candidate, so you've got no basis for what to put into the CV. So what I would suggest is, before you even type one word on the CV, you head out to the big job sites and you run a search for the types of jobs that you're looking for. You scroll through them and you build up a good picture of the type of candidate they're looking for those jobs. So if you take the time to do that research and find out what skills, what knowledge, what experience, what qualifications that your target employers are looking for in the jobs that you're going for, then you're going to have a much better understanding of what you need to put in your own CV. And when you're writing the CV, you just try and reflect those skills and experiences as much as you can to closely match the job adverts, and that way you'll find you'll get a lot more responses, because your CV will look a lot more suitable than if you'd just written the CV without bothering to do that research. Number 2 on the list is poor readability, and what I mean by that is that the CV is difficult for recruiters and hiring managers to read. So you have to remember that when you're applying for jobs, you're one of many, possibly hundreds of people that are applying for the same role, and that recruiter or that hiring manager, their inbox is going to be full with other candidates' applications, so they don't often have the time to read the CVs in full. Generally what they'll tend to do is have a quick skim through each one and then build a shortlist, which they'll then go back to later. So to make sure that you get past that initial skim read, you need to make sure that the CV is very easy to read. So a lot of mistakes that I see people make are not structuring the page properly, not having the correct sections, not breaking the text up, using big chunky paragraphs, and all of those things just make it very hard for anybody to scan through the CV and pick out the information they're looking for. So if you're looking at your CV right now and you're thinking it might be a little bit difficult for people to read, there are a few things you can do to fix it. So firstly, I would say to divide the page up into very clear sections and use bold headings and borders even to break the page up, so that recruiters and hiring managers can navigate it easily and find the sections they want. And secondly, you need to break up the text within that as well. So you need to use short, sharp sentences, very short paragraphs, and make good use of bullet points. Bullet points make it very easy for recruiters to skim through and pick out the things they need. And if you do all of those things, you'll find that recruiters and hiring managers will find it much easier to read your CV, so they'll be able to spot your suitability a lot easier. You'll make it into more shortlists and you'll get more calls for interviews. And if you need any more help with structuring and laying out your CV, then what I've done is I've put a link in the description below to a page on the Standout CV website, which has some example CVs where you can see how a good CV is laid out and structured. Number 3 on the list is having a ridiculous email at the top of the CV. So if you have an email address that might have been cool when you were back in school that you're still using now on your CV, something silly like badboysforever2005@gmail.com. Now that may have been very cool when you were younger, but your CV is a professional document that is going to be seen by company directors, recruiters, hiring managers. So it's really important that you look as professional as possible. And if you've got a silly email address sitting at the very top of the CV, one of the first things that people see, it may cause people to start doubting your credibility and just make you look a little bit unprofessional. So if you do have an email address that looks a bit unprofessional, what I would suggest is simply setting up a new account solely for your job search and just using something like your first name and surname or a close variation of that. That's really all you need to do, and also it'll be a nice way to split up your normal emails from your job search emails. Number 4 on the list is not proving your impact. Now what I mean by that is when people normally write their CV, they have a tendency just to list out the things that they've done in their role. So for example, if you're a salesperson, you might write attending meetings, cold calling, making presentations to clients and other things like that. But what's missing from that is what's the impact on the business. So when you're writing your responsibilities for your roles, you always want to make sure that you try and tie them in with what the impacts were on the business. So for example, in that particular sales role, that person may have made cold calls, they may have gone on meetings, they may have made presentations, that's all very well and good, but they should have added the results to say that they were generating leads or they were generating sales or revenue for the business. And it's not just sales jobs that have achievements. There could be a number of different things that you could achieve for your business. It could be saving money, saving time, it could be bringing on new clients. There are lots of different things. So try and think about, when you're writing your roles, don't just write what you're doing, try and tie those into what the impacts that you made on the business were. And another good tip is to try and use numbers where possible to quantify the impact you've made. So for example, if you were in a customer service role and one of the things you did was you resolved complaints to keep customers coming back, then instead of just writing that you resolved a lot of complaints and you kept a lot of customers on board, you could say something like, you resolved 90% of all complaints within a 2-hour time period and you retained 80% of customers. Now that's obviously just a hypothetical example, but anywhere where you can add numbers like that gives recruiters and hiring managers a real sense of the kind of impact that you could possibly bring to their organisation. Mistake number 5 is using too many clichés within your CV. And when I say clichés, what I mean is things like, I'm a hardworking team player, or I go the extra mile, or I'm a strong communicator. Now those things are all very well and good, but they're generally applicable to most jobs. Whereas in your CV, what you need to be doing is selling yourself as an expert or a professional within your particular field and really selling your hard skills. So your industry specific skills, your software knowledge, languages, anything that actually relates to the jobs you're applying for. And if you fill up the CV with too many generic cliches, it takes away all the space that you need to actually put in the important hard skills. And also those cliches and generic soft skills are overused time and time again in CVs, so they tend to not go down too well with recruiters or hiring managers, so it's best to leave them out of the CV. But what if you want to prove that you're a hardworking team player? Well, what you need to do is you need to imply that rather than state it. So rather than just writing, I'm a hardworking team player, which people might not believe if you just write it, what you need to do is when you're talking about your roles, when you're writing your role descriptions, you need to give examples of where you have been a hardworking team player. So for example, you might write that you worked within a team of 5 and mention some of the goals that you worked towards and achieved within that team. That shows people that you're a hardworking team player, but you haven't had to write it, and you've also had the chance to show some industry specific skills that you've used within that role. And mistake number 6 on the list is having a CV that is too long, having too many pages. Now, as I've mentioned previously, recruiters and hiring managers tend to be very, very busy people, and when they are looking for candidates, they'll generally have hundreds of applications to deal with, on top of working towards deadlines and lots of other stuff going on in their jobs. So for that reason, it means that when your CV is first viewed by a recruiter or a hiring manager, they don't have much time to look at it. Now I know that's a bit frustrating, but unfortunately that's just the way it is. So you need to adapt for that situation. And generally speaking, if you've got a CV that's 5 pages long and you've got really important information tucked down at the bottom of page 5, the chances are when a recruiter does the first skim read of your CV, they might miss that important information, think you're not suitable and skip past you. So in order to rectify this, you need to adapt your CV for the attention spans in the modern recruitment world. So generally speaking, a CV of around about 2 pages is just about the sweet spot. This means that you'll be able to put enough information in to actually persuade people that you're suitable for the job. And it's in a format that can be quickly skim read so that when a recruiter first opens up your CV, they can get an idea of your suitability within the first few seconds. So my advice on CV length would be to keep the CV around about 2 pages or less. If you don't have much experience, then you can probably get away with a 1-page CV. But if you're an experienced candidate with 2 or 3 years experience, then you probably need to max out those 2 pages. But try not to spill onto the 3rd page, because once you start getting onto page 3, 4, you're looking at pages that probably aren't going to get read and information is going to be missed. Mistake number 7 is overcomplicating the design of the CV. Now, a CV really only needs to be a very simple document, but a lot of times I see people putting crazy design features, skills graphs, photographs of themselves, and lots of other weird and wacky things in. Now, generally speaking, these things just overcrowd the page and make it difficult to read, and they actually distract people from the content that you're trying to get across. All your CV really needs to do is show people that you can do the job that they're advertising for. So it just needs to be a plain document, white background, black text, very simple font so it's easy to read, and that's really what it needs to be. If you start trying to cram all of these other weird and wonderful design features in, more often than not, it's just going to have a negative effect on your applications, because if people can't see the content within the CV and you're wasting lots of space with all these crazy features, then people might actually be missing the important things in your CV, your skills, your knowledge, your qualifications, your experience, which means you're not going to get callbacks, which ultimately means you're not going to get interviews and you're not going to get job offers. And just a quick note on photographs and skills graphs. These things are definitely not needed in your CV because they won't have any impact on most job applications. So firstly, a photograph is not necessary unless you are a model or an actor or something like that where your face is needed to be seen. But generally speaking, people don't really care too much about how you look. They just want to know if you can do the job. And skills graphs are generally a huge waste of space because they don't offer a real scale to people. So for example, if you put in a skills graph in your CV where you say that you're a 4 out of 5 at Microsoft Excel, that really means nothing to the person reading it. What you're better off doing is just writing, for example, how good you are at Excel. So do you consider yourself to be an expert, or do you have 3 years experience? That way you give people a real picture of how good you are at Excel, rather than just using a skills graph that they won't understand. And the final CV mistake on this list is failing to optimize the top quarter of your CV. And what I mean by the top quarter of the CV is this part here. It is the part of the CV that is first visible when a recruiter or a hiring manager first opens up the CV. So as you can imagine, this needs to be really impactful, because often if a recruiter or a hiring manager doesn't see what they want and they first open up that CV, they might just shut it straight down and move on to the next one in their inbox. So what you need to do is really pack this section full of the most relevant skills and knowledge, qualifications and experience that you have that closely match the jobs that you're applying for. So if you cram this section full of the skills and experience that recruiters are looking for, then it stands to reason that they're going to take notice, they're probably going to read further, and that's going to mean that you've got more chance of getting into shortlists and getting callbacks and interviews. So that brings me to the end of the video. I hope you found it helpful and you're going to go away with some ways that you can actually improve your own CV and start to get some better results in the job market. If you have found the video helpful, it would be great if you could drop us a like below. And if you need more advice on CV writing and job search, we've got lots on the Standout CV website and also on the YouTube channel. I'll put some links in the description to some example CV writing guides and other resources that you might find helpful. So thanks very much for watching and best of luck with your job search.